In today's episode, we got a 65-year-old who's retiring in 2 years. She's got about $230,000 worth of investable assets, and she wants to know what it's going to look like. Can she retire next year? And if she does, will the money she have last long enough to make up her shortfall over the next 25 or 30 years? So let's jump to a planning session and check it out. So here we are on the dashboard for the client. It is a 65-year-old female, and she's not going to retire until age 67, which is her full retirement age. She was born after 1960. She's going to take 100% of her benefits at 67, which is what she's looking for. She's not going to delay. But more so what she's looking to find out or discover is if these investable assets, her $220,000 of retirement savings, is enough to cover her shortfall for the next 20, 25, 30 years or so, just through retirement. So we're going to take a look at that today. We're going to start by opening up reports. And you guys know I love the cash flow statement because that's usually my first stop. I'm going to change the plan over to the one with all the correct inputs, and we're going to take a look at how this works. So first of all, we'll start with income. And what we're looking at here is we're not so worried about this year just before she retires, more so the year of retirement and on. So here she is 67. She is now retired. Her income's about $63,000 per year. Let's open up income flows and see what that's comprised of. It looks like she's got a pension at about $35K a year. Salary stops up there, and Social Security kicks on that following year. And she doesn't get a full year of it because her birthday, I would bet, is probably February, March. So she misses a month or so there. But she does in the following, she gets a full 12 months. And so we can see she's at right about $31,000 or so. And in the combination of those two is about $67,000 per year. Now, we also want to consider that these numbers are growing. We can see moving down the column for the pension and Social Security that they are growing. And that's because we've applied an index at about 2.5–3%, because Social Security and pensions, most pensions will offer a cost of living adjustment to keep up with the rising cost of goods and services. COLA is similar to a raise while you're working for an employer. When you're during your working years, when you're part of the workforce, we call this a raise. Now, moving back to cash flow, the next thing we want to take a peek at are the expenses, and we want to do comparisons. So we know we got about 63 in that first year. Expenses are about, let's call it almost $71,000 per year. So she's spending a lot more starting retirement. We can see that. Not today's focus. She will have shared that with us in the first meeting, which is the discovery meeting. And whatever she's planning on spending, it's creating a shortfall. So I don't know if she's buying, big toys for the grandkids, or if she's vacationing, or maybe moving into a new home. But it looks like she's at about $8,200 shortfall. So the difference between her income and her expenses is negative. In that first year, it's 82. In the next year, it's 6,000. And the reason why it's a little smaller is because earlier we saw that she will take a full 12 months in the 2 years after her 2 years after her retirement. So there we go. 6,000, and that's being taken, this shortfall, from her portfolio, and the portfolio is set to grow conservatively at 4% because she is very risk averse. She doesn't want to lose what she has. She knows I think she's done the math loosely and has, and feels that she's in pretty thin ice, which is why we're running the retirement scenario for her. So now what we want to do is kind of just look that out a little further. Usually when I'm planning on the fly today. I usually catch things just randomly. It looks like here we have this strange spike up in her expenses where she jumps to about $12,000. This is interesting, and I would assume that a couple of things. First of all, I would assume it's RMDs. I'm assuming I would think that you guys would have a similar thought. Is it RMDs? If we move all the way to the left, we see, in fact, it's not, because her RMDs don't start into the following year, and we can see that here, $8,400 under planned distributions. Those are otherwise known as RMDs. So why is her shortfall about $12,000? And I'd be very impressed if you guys got the answer for this. For me, I'm going to take a guess. And what I'm going to guess is that her Social Security benefit, because it's growing with COLA, has reached a point where it's past that 50% is taxable threshold into the 85%. And if you didn't know that, it's a little complex. Social Security Administration, or I should say the IRS, they tax your benefits at 2 rates. Well, 3 rates. 0 of it if you're under some income threshold according to your filing status. And then 50%, and then lastly 85%. So I think what has happened here, and we'll check in just a second, is that she has passed that upper threshold, and now the larger percentage of her benefit, 85, is being taxed. And we can do that by looking at an income tax report. And I will show you, let's see if our guess is correct. So if we jump into gross income, fortunately I did almost 15 years of taxes, so 10 years of taxes, but if you count the 10 years I've been in this business and some overlap there where I've continued to do tax planning, but instead of preparing more so these plan builds, I guess it's 15 years of tax experience. So here we go. Let's take a look. Taxable, Social Security, and if we move on down, look at that. We've got 17 to 19, to call it $2,000 difference, $2,000 difference. Then 19 to 20 is $1,000 difference. So we got $1,000, $2,000 difference in here, and then all of a sudden, boom! At age 71, it jumps to $28,200. I would assume and put my money on the fact that that is based on her income reaching some point where it breaks through that next taxable table, and she's paying the higher percent. That's what it looks like here. So now going back to the cash flow statement, we can see that this client has this shortfall for, all of her retirement. It does drop back down, getting back to that 11,000, that 12,000. We figured out why it jumps up, and it would continue that high throughout retirement, but something happens here. She, at the age 72, like all of you, 72, unless they change it like they did from 70 and a half to 72, just back in, 2020, is required to take or make distributions, minimum distributions from her pre-taxed retirement savings accounts. And we can see that as planned distributions here. It's about 4% it starts at, and then it makes its way up. It's the IRS's attempt to bleed out your account so they can get paid before you die. That's really what it is. And I don't know why they care anyways, because your beneficiaries are going to get their hands on it, and it's likely that your children or your grandkids will be in their highest taxed or income years, so their tax rates will be the highest. They'd get more of that money if they're patient, but I guess they were patient enough. So the reason why you go up to 12, we know, because the Social Security, more of it's tax. But then we go back down all of a sudden. It should be 12 and remain about 12, but it's not, because we're forced to take this income. And that income wipes out, $8,000 worth of that shortfall. And that income is just, again, it's being forced out of the retirement savings. Now let's take a look at the retirement savings. We see that we are on a schedule for depletion. We go from 225. We go up a little bit here until that shortfall really starts to kick in. And then we just can't handle losing that much money. The market, that 4% she's earning, is just not enough to keep up with how much she's distributing to cover her shortfall. If we jump into withdrawals, which you will know is another one of my favorite reports, we can see that here. So we've got starting at about 4% in that first year of retirement, and then we got a full year of Social Security, so it gets a little lower. But after we get out here a little further, when that when her checkings, she's got savings that she's going to use first. So there's something called liquidity priority in when you're planning for clients in retirement, and that is that you usually want to take distributions from your retirement savings accounts in a order. Liquidity priority means that we'll take from assets that are taxed less first. So savings accounts, you already paid tax on them years and years ago at a lower tax rate. If we use them now at this high tax rate, that's great, because we won't pay tax. And so that's what you see happening here. And we use this all the time for clients. It's different, it's not always the same. It's not always the same distribution method. But anyways, the reason why is because we really don't start taking from those investment accounts where the tax rate goes up dramatically until down here in the future. So in those first few years, we're not really taking a whole lot from, We're taking some from the portfolio, but we're not paying tax. That's what's happening. Down here, we're taking so much from those retirement accounts that more of her income is taxed, and with more tax means greater shortfall. The more we're going to need that year from her retirement savings. So that's what we're seeing, and then it just continues into a point where you can no longer, the balance gets so low that what we need from it is such a great percentage that there's no way we could achieve that in the stock market. That's another thing that's interesting about retirement planning, is that you have to be really careful, because if you're withdrawing 4% every year and your assets are making 3.85 or 3.95, just 5 basis points less than what you're taking, man, it doesn't seem like it would get away from you, but it can, and you have to be careful. Because before you know it, you end up with a situation like this where, okay, we're only taking about 9%, and then you get down here within these last few years, and all of a sudden, boom, before you know it, within a 5-year span, you go from taking 20% down to 100%. You've exhausted your retirement savings. You have to be careful of that. Now, we know she's going to run out of monies, and one of the big reasons for that is that she's too conservative. She's so conservative that she cannot make enough in order to keep up with her withdrawals. And if we look at that withdrawals page right here, we can see what she needs to maintain. She needs to maintain those first few years a little over. She's maintaining that. She's earning 4% on those assets. And so she needs to get here and earn about probably closer to 5.5%, 6%. I'm going to head over to Monte Carlo like I said I would, which is here. Monte Carlo update. Does she have any chance at making it? And if you guys don't know, because you haven't heard me define it or describe it, Monte Carlo is just creating 1,000 simulations of the plan. So it just duplicates it 1,000 times, and in each one of those plans, it changes the rate of return for each year on her retirement savings accounts. And then it tells us, based on the first 25, so it says upside cases, the top 25, she's negative. And median, moderate, the middle 50, say 500 or so, we're looking at negative, and the last, or downside 25, we're negative 178. This plan is not viable. What she has in mind right now will not work. So she's going to have to make some changes. So we see the client is in a bit of a mess. So she's got her Social Security and pension, but it's not enough to keep up with her expenses. And she's not earning enough in her portfolio in order to cover her annual shortfall. And eventually that catches up with her. So her biggest problem is that 4% she earns on average in her portfolio, and that's based on her risk tolerance. So, she's got a few different choices here. She can either buck up and she can get more aggressive and shoot for a higher annual rate of return, which again is taking some risk there. So would we recommend that? We'd have to look a lot closer. Second recommendation, and the one I'm kind of moving towards, is people don't like the A word, but it might be an annuity play for this client. And I'm going to go ahead and start building an income plan with an annuity to see if that's a viable option for this client. All right, I'm going to walk you guys through how I would build this income strategy for the client. And first of all, I'm going to go into the plans tab and open, or duplicate, I should say, this expense adjustment. So that's what we've been looking at. And I'll call that annuity income. And now I'm going to start with so the system allows you to get real custom and specific about how you want to build out different income strategies. To start, though, I want to see what their system does with its default annuity income option. Usually it's going to spit out about 5% of whatever we invest. So let's just see if that works off the bat. So the way we do that is we're going to hit add new, and then we got investment, and no, it won't be investment, it'll be annuity strategy. And I'll add that, and then we'll make some changes here. Base the benefit on the client, percentage of the portfolio to convert. I'm going to convert 100% of it in the very first year to see what we get. So hit save, and then we will jump back to reports, and let's go ahead and refresh this. I don't think it'll have that new plan ready for us. And go into cash flow, open up this annuity income tab. How does it look? No data available. She doesn't have any portfolio assets. We've given those all to the annuity, the insurance carrier. Now, this is problematic though, because look here, we have, if we go back, we've got enough income. If we open up this income flows here, now we see, in addition to her Social Security and her pension, we have this annuity income. And they're willing to pay her $10,283 per year. This is the default by the system because this is pretty close to what most annuities would provide. So she's got $10,200 coming from this annuity, almost $10,300, plus Social Security and pension, pushes the income to about $73. But is it enough? Let's go back and look. Wasn't looking too promising, I'll tell you that. It looked better. So we've got 73, expenses of 71,663. So in that first year, she's fine. Actually, she's doing okay. She's net cash flowing positive. She's cash flow positive. In the next year, positive. The problem is down here in the future. Eventually, her expenses are equal to or greater than, in this case, slightly greater than her income. And that's because, if you didn't notice, it's right here. A lot of these annuities, they won't provide a cost of living adjustment. So her pension is growing, her Social Security is growing, but the annuity is not. And eventually, because they're right out the gate, she's so close, they're neck and neck. She's just slightly above. If the annuity would provide a cost of living adjustment, I think she could make it. The problem is that out here in the future, eventually, her expenses get ahead of her income because that $10,000 from the annuity is not growing. And then eventually that leads her into, she doesn't have the problem with this plan too is she doesn't have a savings. She's giving it all away. So if she runs negative on any year, it's just too bad. I mean, she would be out of monies that year. So far, this is not a great solution. I think I have another idea though. A lot of these companies will offer a bonus to come into the product. I'm wondering if we find a product that pays a little bit more instead of 5%, 5.5% to 6%, and a lot of them will give that. I'm thinking the Allianz 222. We will get that 20% bonus going in, and this could change. It's also in California, and I'm just throwing out a loose figure here, but about 20% on the income base, and then we're looking at like a 6% or so withdrawal rate at her age. So I'm going to plug that into the plan and see how it looks. So jumping into that next solution, I've gone ahead and made some changes inside the annuity income scenario. So we have a few things here. First of all, I have to transfer the money out of the IRA into an annuity. So I've set up a different type of annuity here. So if I open that up, this one gives it a lot more control. And all I've done here, if we take a look, is I've got the transfer out, so we know the money's here. It's about 183. I'm going to bump that up in a moment because this type of annuity does offer a bonus. So we've got a guarantee years of payout. It's based on annuitization of the life of the client, which is Mrs. Client. It's got a guaranteed payout. I just put this as 40. It's guaranteed to pay for life, and 40 is beyond her, age 100. And even if she lived beyond the 40-year period, it would continue to pay. But it's kind of a feature inside the software that I have to place a figure there. So I'm just putting it well above her age 100 or over her age 100. I think that would get her to 105. And looking back up at the top, I'm going to go over to this guarantees tab. And then what we need to figure out is what the guarantee is on the initial, the rollover from the IRA plus 20%, which is what this product would offer, and then multiplied by about 6% should be the payout rate. So I'm going to jump over to the IRA, and I'm going to bump that up by 120%. So annual amount 189. So we'll bump that by 120, which, opening a calculator here, looks like 189,170 times 120%. We're at 227. So I'm going to take a quick screenshot of that so I don't forget it. 227004, and we're going to go ahead and hit save here. So now we need to change the amount of that IRA to it. So let's go ahead into plan changes. I'm going to add or make a change to investments. Taxable, we need to see a retirement qualified fidelity. Now I'm just going to increase the value of this account. Got to find ways to kind of bend the system to do what we want. There's a million different ways to skin the cat, but this should work for us. So I'll save that. I'm going to check the ledger to see, in fact, if that is the case. I think we could check assets as well. So let's go to reports to see if that transfer is happening the way we anticipate. So go to annuity income, and then I'll jump down to, let's go into assets. All right, annuity assets at year end 227,004. Is that what we wanted? That was what we wanted. And then it's transferred out. You'll see it's gone that next year because we've annuitized it, and I'm going to get there now. So going back in here, we've gone ahead and moved the monies over to the annuity, the 227,004. So it's a 20% bonus on the value of the the contribution, the rollover, because it was coming from the IRA. And whatever comes over, they'll add 20% on top of that to the income base where we take income from. So now I have to go into guarantees, and I have to tell it what that income would be. So we had 227,004. What do we have on that? 227,004, 6%. And this should be 6% as well. Able to hard code that in here, but we're going to save it like this and see if we can get what we want. Going back to cash flow. Let's see if we got our annuity income. 13,620 and 13,620. So that's what we want to see. So now the client has, from that annuity, we went ahead and took everything from the IRA and rolled it over. We added 20% on top of that to fund an annuity, because typically you'll see that type of offer out there in the wild. In addition, that's just on the income base, not the real cash. In addition to that, we're going to start an income stream. And at about that client's age, it's a little optimistic to get 6, but it's not impossible. 5.5% to 6% at about 67-year-olds at the age of 67 makes sense. And so we'd be looking at 13.6. I can come down on that too for you guys so we can see what it looks like. So I'm going to get back to cash flow to see how that ends up looking for us. And scrolling down against their expenses, she's positive about 16 in the first year retirement, and then about double that in the next couple years, and then it comes down from there. However, one nice note is that we have kept a little bit of savings, not a whole lot here. We've transferred, the entire IRA, most of her assets, over into an annuity to produce this lifetime income stream, but she does have some savings left, and that is starting to grow a little bit. And she can make it pretty far here. It looks like she's able to make it. She gets into the shortfall here, and she's able to make it all the way down, until she's about 97. So, this is still not perfect. We could probably take, all of her savings into the annuity. I think at that point we'd be pushing our luck and probably putting the client in a place that's unsafe, because if there are emergencies, she's going to need some cash. So that ends up not even being an option. You need at least 6 months of savings. So that's not viable. And 6 months, so about half of 74, it's just about 40K. So 40K needs to stay there. She's going to have to figure out a way to cut on her expenses. We would have to have an elaborate conversation, detailed and lengthy, about how she can cut back. We do have an expense worksheet. It is very detailed, so we would look at that together and decide what expenses have we added that we can remove in order to make sure that we have a sustainable retirement. Let's take a look at the Monte Carlo real quick for this. Where's our Monte Carlo? There it is. All right, so we got annuity income. It's running. Oh my. Yeah, that's not great. It's got a 14% chance of succeeding. Yeah, I would say we're going to have to come back to this. The client's most likely going to have to work longer. This is just, she's not going to be able to retire. And 14% probability is it's nearly impossible. It's majority of the cases fail moderately. And here at the top, only 25 cases out of 1,000 actually have a success rate with 22,384. I mean, a few things to be said there, but I'll jump to a summary and then we'll let you guys go. Wow. Okay, so that is pretty bleak. The client can't retire in the next, 2 years when she turns 67. I think that would be a mistake. One of the most powerful levers as it pertains to retirement is going to be working longer. And we don't like to say it because everyone hates to hear it, but it's just the truth. We have run so many plans, and working an extra 2 or 3 years, you wouldn't believe it, but that is almost more powerful than anything else you could possibly do. Lower taxes, lower inflation, more to the contributions or to your retirement savings, higher rate of return, beats almost everything, because that's going to defer the working, a retirement year. You're going to be working that year instead of spending your retirement savings. And then usually you're able to defer more into those retirement accounts. And it gives those assets another year at the rate of return to grow. So in every way possible, working or deferring retirement tends to be the number one fix to a failing retirement plan. Now, the other thing too is some clients might take the risk anyways because they're so sold on going out at 67 that they will. And you look at longevity and you say to yourself, okay, well, client, the plan is built to run at out at 97. Monte Carlo tells us a little something different, but even if that were to get the client into the mid 80s, late 80s, looking at family history, oftentimes people don't make it into even their 80s, and so the client might decide that they would retire anyways, knowing that they might not have all the longevity to keep them going into the 90s like the plan predicts. That is still a big risk, and I would advise against it. But clients, will make their decisions ultimately. And again, it's not something this client's going to want to hear. Is they're going to have to work most likely until they're about 70 years old, and that's going to push up their Social Security. We're going to be able to save more. The assets will grow to a larger amount because they'll earn interest over those 3 years. And what I'll do is I'll make a second video coming back and applying a delayed retirement strategy to see how this plan ends up looking in the future. So thanks for tuning in on this episode. Probably not the news that everybody wants to hear, but it is a reality that many of you just, that's why you want a plan built, because you really don't know how any of this looks until you have a big calculator doing it all for you. As long as I've been doing this, it's impossible, even using a compounding calculator, it's just impossible to work it all out. The software makes all these things, easy for us, and we can create all kinds of scenarios to see whether or not, if you can pull the trigger, if you'll be able to retire when you like, or if, what the plan will be. We can start creating solutions for you so that you can retire when you want. Anyways, thanks again for tuning in, guys. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll talk to you in the next episode.